Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Pronago is bringing you another match featuring the new race, the Escozi. It is, of course, going to be a matchup between not just one, but two Escozi players. That's right, we got two of them now. Try your best to ignore the computers in the top right. I don't know. Well, I do know actually why that's there. It's because people who configured the map didn't add the Krig action that hides them from the leaderboard or whatever. Makes them be treated like a witness for the purposes of leaderboard stuff like this. So we do have to get rid of those at some point. Otherwise, I guess they could set the players to unally or something. Anyway, easier to do it the other way. So just ignore it for now. Obviously, things are a little bit scuffed on the UI front. Obviously, things are a little bit incomplete with the Escozi. But I did want to get another Escozi cast in. And you guys might be wondering, Protogar, are you going to have more Escozi casts after that epic one that you casted between Kutyam, who decided to remain on Tier 1 as a gentleman's agreement between him and Doglived, and of course Doglived himself playing in that front? Yeah, I will definitely be on guard, on the lookout for additional Escozi games that I can cast, and ideally on more recent versions of the game as well. I hope to see some of y'all playing the Escozi, submitting your replays if you get some good ones that work. You know, got to watch back those replays, make sure that they're working properly. Everything could be different with the new race. Everything could be a little bit wonky and finicky. They actually use floating points are most likely the cause of desyncs, and they use floating points a lot more than the other races just for their baseline construction. So, yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. Our players are Shambler, the yellow Escozi in the bottom right, and Alexhandr, the blue Escozi in the top left. And Alexander's doing a very interesting strategy here where he's gone for a 1 Radix Gauntlet Rush, which is going to allow him access to the Vicar from the Radix. If he ends up making a function, he can then make the Intendant from the function. The other thing he can do, though, is once the Gauntlet exists, he can go for Cosmoscope. We'll see if he does that. That's the air structure. Meanwhile, Shambler on the other side of it is just going triple Radix Missionary production and being pretty conservative initially. The Missionary gets more movement speed when it's attacked. Obviously, that means that while you're hanging out here or moving general army rotations, you're not going to be as speedy as like a proselyte, which actually we haven't seen in action just yet. It's a unit you make from the landlock, so there is that. Also, just as a quick reminder, the team building of the Escozi, which is actually what uses that floating point stuff I was talking about earlier, is indeed, well, it doesn't work in the sense that like the HP does not increase at the same rate as the building. And so far, I have not changed that because I think it's actually kind of an interesting quirk, and we'll see if it ends up being good or not. But probably it will end up being smoothed out. However, the end result is that the Radix here is a little bit aflame because of the fact that it hasn't been constructed properly. Obviously, like the graphics for them being on fire and the graphics for them being what they are, as far as just in general their structures and their construction steps and stuff, that will all change over. Alexhandr is going to go ahead and make his Intendant. That's that blank item in the top there. That's what's enabled by the Gauntlet. His second function is on the way as well. I thought maybe he would go with the Vicar route. Vicars can also pull units, allied units towards them with an active ability. It's pretty cool. Now we have all of these Radixes, as you can see. It's a pretty big heavy committal onto Radix spam for Shambler. He's adding his 5th one so far, and he is just making nothing but missionaries. And as you can see here, he has 18 of the things. Meanwhile, we do have Alexhandr with, much less of a military force. He actually has been falling behind in worker production as well. He's not the best player in terms of mechanics, but he was one of the most excited players about the Escozi, and he was waiting for the Escozi to be playable to the point where he was shocked that we debuted it so quickly. So hats off to him. So his missionaries will be a little bit of a bottleneck here for those of the Shambler. You see that green overlay over the Shambler's units will indicate that they can be migrated a little bit faster, but you can see these Intendants are doing a lot of damage to those poor saps. It turns out that the word being spread across the world is die, and the Intendants are the ones saying it. Now, it does look like they will be overwhelmed at the end of the day. The Intendant has splash damage on its main gun and a secondary weapon if you get too close to them. So trying to actually run them down can be a little bit of an ill omen. But Alexhandr has double function, producing lots of Intendants and adding a second Radix as well. So it looks like he's going to be fine here on the hold. There's no way that for Shambler to, he'd have to spread versus what the Intendants are providing. And so, yeah, he fails to do that. He loses a lot of his missionaries. There you go. The Intendant hold is complete. What does Alexhandr want to do behind this? He doesn't have an expansion. Shambler doesn't either. No landlock on the way. You'll know when it is because the UI icon is bugged on this version of the game. I have fixed that since. but it's very amusing. It's actually basically it's the same size of the typical command icon in the UI art, so that's why it's doing that. It's just it wasn't processed. It was like the old version before the process. A lot of fixes to sound files as well. A lot of fixes to all sorts of things available on the main, the pre-release version of the game right now. Which, for all intents and purposes, when you're testing a new race, it might as well be the main version. Everybody and their mother is playing it. Shout out to my mom. She does not actually play Cosmonarchy, but it would be cool if she did. Looks like Alexhandr getting ready to take his expansion, and he's pushing across the map with some intendants. I'm not so sure that the missionaries are going to be capable of holding this off completely, but with a cliff advantage, they should have a little bit of an easier time. It's really, amusing to me that Shambler is refusing to get anything other than missionaries at this point. But here we go. He's going to see if he can focus them down. Not really actually any focus fire to be heard. A pretty cost-efficient trade for Alexhandr, all things considered. He is expanding behind this, and he softens up a lot of the leftover missionaries. His leftover units are going to be returning back home to defend the expansion, but it looks pretty good for him initially. Seems like he's got a better grasp of which units to grab. There were a bunch of games that these two played together. I'm told that the win rate is approximately even, but I did pick a random sampling. We are going to see 2 games cast today, this one and another one. So we will see how that takes shape later on, but in case you guys were wondering, what's up with the score? What are we doing there? Yeah, that's what we're doing there. All right. Shambler going to go ahead and start team building his landlock with extra pilgrims. Is that happening down here? It's actually already complete, but as you can see, you can actually tell how many workers that were involved in the team building based on how much HP is missing. So yeah, clearly Shambler spent way more working on his rather than the what Alexhandr did. So that's pretty interesting. More missionaries, more intendants, just building out as much as we can here. Looks like the production is waning a little bit there while Shambler is starting to leverage his superior worker count, although some of them are idle. We do have some cardinals on the way for Shambler. He wants to see if he can get in on the front lines. I think the big issue you're going to foresee with that is that you are going to need to deal with the upfront hit scan attack of the Intendant. I don't think the Cardinal is going to be capable of doing that just yet. Alexander's army looks pretty scary. He's going to come in here and ignore the initial landlock. As you can see, the secondary attack here, which doesn't... It has a sound in the modern version of the game, but not in this patch, is going to just be allowed to walk in and destroy everything. Plus the primary gun just focusing things down. Yeah, this looks really difficult for Shambler to do anything about. His Cardinals are going to be initially focused down, but the big chunks there were all of the missionaries blowing up to splash damage, right? And the fact that Shambler has not split his missionaries, but he also doesn't have anything that's good versus armor. The missionaries are a little bit weak to armor. They have no armor pen, and it's 2x4, so they're actually dealing 2x6 instead, right? Well, actually 2x2. They're dealing half damage to these guys. Yeah, Shambler doesn't type GG. He's over. He's done for, and that is Escozi Xander, Alexhandr, taking a game off of him. Just has a better idea of what the game's all about. You know, maybe I should think about bumping Alexander's rank up. You know, now that he's Escozi's out, he might be a class 2 player. I don't know. We'll see. Let's see what's behind door number 2. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We have the Shambler as the blue Escozi this time around in the bottom right. And in the top left, Alexhandr, who must have rolled Zerg or played Zerg, has gotten the initial Kager here, but it's not infested, I swear. Alexhandr is our yellow Escozi player, and he looks like he's already going to be speed building his Radix, which is interesting. Now, you do have to be a little bit obnoxious with it. The pilgrims don't always get to the building site correctly, and then you have to like retask them, so a little bit annoying. Whoa, Shambler doing the same thing on the other side. 5 workers made that Escozi Radix. Let's see what happens behind closed doors here, because I feel like if you use a little bit fewer workers than your opponent to team build, and then you have your unit ready to go, like it's not that much of a gap, right? Like these are pretty much coming out at the same time. So I feel like as a result, it's not really going to be that significant of a difference there, but Shambler's still going to send his first missionary across. Even if this was built lazily with only 1 worker, I think the missionary would still be here in time. So I think if you're going to do this kind of thing, you probably need to commit like 3 workers off not off the boat as soon as you launch the game, but more like 3 of your initial couple workers that you make are going to have to be rallied forward, making proxy radix. And you're going to need to do like a bunch of them, right? So similar to the proxy stockade that Shambler's been doing in TVZ. It's going to be pretty unhappy to see that there's already 2 missionaries out here for Alexhandr. And he does scout the function, so he should be aware that tech is coming. I don't know what the order of events was as far as like which game came first. I think technically this game might have been sequential, right? So this might have come after. But either way, Shambler, we'll see if he can adapt to the fact that his opponent is going to go mech Escozi. We already have the Cypher coming this time around, so Mimics from the Radix, and the other unit you get is the Scepter, which can scrap enemy units. Pretty potent structure, or pretty potent unit, I should say. It does turn into something a little bit later. You take fatal damage, it increases its range, and then, redeploys it and immobilizes. So the Cypher's done. Let's see what Alexhandr wants out of it. He's pretty low eco right now. Also cutting workers to afford whatever he plans to build from his production. It kind of worked out for him last time, but I think that was just a compositional error. It wasn't necessarily a good play thing, per se. Shambler just sticking to Radix, sticking to Missionaries. The only time he changed his units was to add Cardinals at the very end, and that was a empty gesture, shall we say. I'm guessing Scepters are what he wanted, unless he's going to go Cosmoscope. We'll find out. Now that strings are extended, I was actually thinking that for tech structures that unlock units like the Hydra Den, right, the Hydra Den, or indeed the Cypher, it should probably like come with a tooltip on it that says like these are unlocked units or something, and it could be like passive icon colorations of the units it unlocks, just to help players who are new to whatever it is. It'll help with learning the Zerg race as well as the Escozi race. So I think that's pretty good. And, if we have tech unlocks for the future races like Blood Summon and Kogri, we'll definitely want to show that out. So I don't know. It's just an idea that I figured I would throw out there as a potential concept for you guys to stew on. So right about now, with the Scepter on the way, that'll be Alexander's first deployment of tech. He's already got one out on the field. See if the 14 missionary attack is going to be any better than the 18 missionary attack versus Intendant was in the previous game that we saw. Pretty exciting that people are already trying to play Escozi versus Escozi, like get those mirrors going, see what the meta is, and see which units are good. Obviously, there's going to be so many wild changes to the game between then and now. So the Scepters arrive. Remember that they scrap the corpses of anybody they attack, so Alexhandr is getting some minerals for it, but this looks like a lot harder for him to actually do. You can see him trying to get right on top of the Escozi units on the front line there for Shambler, and that's because once his units take fatal damage, initially they will be deployed. There's no read for it in this version of the game. There's a little bit more of a read for it later on. You may have heard that sound effect as well. But even despite that, it's not really that adept at dealing with everything that you would want it to deal with. And it doesn't really look like Alexhandr has much at home. No crowd control either. He's going to throw down the gauntlet, but I think he's already going to be smacked upside the head with it here. Doesn't feel like Shambler's going to pull punches once he realizes how absolutely reduced to nothing Alexhandr has been. Looks like Shambler will have his revenge then, after all. I just can't imagine. Some of these missionaries are kind of wounded, but you can kind of ignore the Scepter and just go after the workers at this point, right? Or you can just sit here and kill it, spawn camp it, so to speak. The gauntlet isn't being team built, so there's no way that that's going to get finished anytime soon. And down it goes. GG is going to be called. Alexhandr providing that concession, and that is the first Escozi versus Escozi series of games that we have cast, or in fact, Escozi versus Escozi games we have cast at all. Yeah, not actually a whole lot to chew on there. We did really only see, what, 4 military units out of them combined, and so, apparently missionaries are the way, according to Shambler. He thinks that there's no reason you should get anything else. I could think of a reason, and it's armor. Good luck trying to blow up in structures with them or anything of the sort. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed that little sneak peek, and yeah, we'll go back to a couple of other games that don't have the Escozi in them, I'm sure, unless in the interim, while I'm waiting for the next video after that I record after this to publish, more epic Escozi games go up, and then I cast those, and I just keep pushing back when I deploy the non-Escozi featuring match. I do want to see like Escozi versus Zerg, of course Escozi versus Protoss. It's really exciting that there's so many more matchups in the game just based off of including one race. And I'm going to be honest, guys, 2026, you'll see at least one other race be added as well. All right, enough teasing. GG's. I'll see you guys in the next video.